The grand hall of the Zalari Empire was shining with gold, silver, and floating crystals. Thousands of alien nobles had gathered. Long tails, glowing eyes, tall bodies, all dressed in rich royal robes. This was not just any day. Today, the new royal heir would be named. At the front stood Emperor Zaran, tall and powerful, with black horns and golden armor. Next to him, a small platform had been placed, but no one was standing on it yet. The nobles whispered and chuckled, expecting a great warrior prince to step forward. But when the royal doors opened, everyone stopped breathing. A tiny figure walked in. Thin, barely reaching most aliens' waists. Her steps were slow but careful. She wore a silver cape too big for her. Her ears were pointed and her violet eyes looked around with fear and courage. "She's a child?" someone whispered. "She's a girl?" Another laughed. Gasps and chuckles spread like fire. That tiny figure was Prince Nali, though she looked more like a child lost in a costume. "She's the heir?" One noble said out loud, laughing. "This is a joke, right?" Even the guards near the throne looked at each other, confused. But Emperor Zaran raised a hand, commanding silence. "This is my chosen blood," he announced. "The future of our empire, Prince Nali." Nali stood tall, trying to show no fear, but her hands were shaking. She could hear the laughter, the whispers, the doubt. "She's too small," one noble muttered. "She will never lead armies," another hissed. "Let the empire burn, then," an old general sneered. At the far end of the hall, one figure watched silently. A human, the only human present in the entire palace. He stood near the giant crystal pillars, unnoticed by most. His name was Cole Davis, a cultural observer sent by Earth to study alien traditions. Cole didn't laugh. He saw something in Nali's eyes. Fear, yes, but under that fear was something else. Fire. The ceremony moved on. A high priest stepped forward and read from the ancient scroll. "According to the laws of the ancients," he said, "any heir to the empire must be claimed. One soul must raise their hand in support. Only then shall the trials begin. Who among you stands for Prince Nali?" The hall fell silent. No one moved. The emperor's face grew tight. Even he was beginning to doubt. Nali looked around, her eyes searching, pleading, hoping someone, anyone, would raise their hand. Not a single hand moved, and then a hand rose, not a claw, not a tail. A human hand, all heads turned. Murmurs echoed. Cole Davis was standing straight, hand raised high. "I do," he said, his voice clear. "I stand with her." The room froze. An alien noble shouted, "You are not one of us, human." Another barked, "Your support is invalid." But the priest read again from the scroll, eyes wide. "The law says one soul. It does not say it must be Zalari." The emperor spoke slowly. "So it is accepted." Nali stared at Cole. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She had never seen him before. Why would a human, a stranger, choose her? Cole walked slowly forward and stopped beside her. He bent slightly and whispered, "Don't give up. Let them laugh. Then make them regret it." The nobles were furious. One noble female pointed and screamed, "Then let the trials begin. Let her prove she's worthy. Let her fail in front of us all." The emperor agreed. "Very well. The trials begin at sunrise." Gasps filled the air again. The trials were designed for warriors, strong, trained adults. Nali was barely 13 in human years. As the court session ended, the nobles left, laughing again. Some pointed. Some shook their heads. "Let the little girl try," one said. "It will be entertaining." But Nali wasn't thinking about them anymore. She was thinking about that one hand, still raised, still standing beside her, still believing in her, and in her heart. Something changed, maybe, just maybe. She had a chance. Cole Davis stood beside the small alien girl, Prince Nali, his hand still raised. The alien nobles stared with cold eyes. Many looked disgusted. Others looked confused. A few looked afraid. Nali glanced at the human again. She still didn't understand why he had supported her. He wasn't her friend. He wasn't even from her planet, and yet, when no one else stood with her, he did. The royal guards led them out of the grand hall and into a private chamber. Nali's feet were sore from standing so long. The silver robe still dragged behind her. She looked up at Cole and asked quietly, "Why?" Cole shrugged. "Because you were alone." "That's not a reason," she said. Cole knelt down to her level. "Maybe not for them. he replied, pointing toward the palace walls. But for me, it is. Before Nali could speak again, the doors burst open. 3 High Lords entered. They were large, elegant, and angry. One wore blue silk with sharp bone rings. Another wore a battle cloak soaked in animal blood. The third had a snake-like tongue that flicked when he talked. "You human," the first one growled. "Step away from the fake heir." "She's no fake," Cole answered calmly, standing up. "She's a weakling," the second sneered. "She will break in the first trial. And your support," the third hissed, "is nothing more than a circus act." Cole didn't raise his voice. "Then let's see how this circus act does in the trials." The nobles stormed out, leaving a thick silence behind. Nali sat on a velvet bench, eyes wide. "You'll get in trouble," she whispered. "The nobles. They're dangerous," Cole smiled. "I've been around dangerous before." She looked at him closely for the first time. He was older than she expected, gray at the edges of his hair, lines near his eyes. But there was a calm strength in him. The kind of strength that didn't need to shout. She asked, "Do humans care about rank?" Cole answered, "Some do, but I care about character, and I saw yours." Later that night, the palace halls echoed with whispers. Nobles met in secret rooms. Council members argued over the rules. One said, "We can't allow this girl to survive the trials." Another hissed, "She must fail. Or she might gather support." A third added, "If she survives, that human may become dangerous too." Plans were made. Extra traps would be added. No mercy. Before sunrise, Nali stood in the trial chambers. The ground was black stone marked with deep cracks. Fires burned in iron bowls. Strange machines hovered above, scanning her heartbeat, temperature, and fear levels. A voice echoed across the chamber. Trial 1, the Wall of Fire. A wide wall, almost 50 feet tall, burst into flames. Holes appeared across its surface. The only way to climb it was to grab the burning metal rungs and pull yourself up. Nali's small hands shook. Her heart raced. Her skin was thin. This wasn't a trial. It was a punishment. Cole stood behind the safety line, watching with steady eyes. He didn't yell. He didn't panic. He just waited. Nali looked back at him. He nodded once. Just once. But it was enough. She walked forward. The nobles watched from high balconies, sipping drinks and whispering. One laughed. "She'll last 2 seconds." Another muttered, "I hope she screams." Nali reached the wall. The heat hit her like a slap. But she didn't step back. She touched the first rung. It burned. She bit her lip. Grabbed it, pulled. Smoke rose around her. Her fingers turned red. But she kept climbing. Cole whispered under his breath, "You've got this, kid." Halfway up, she slipped. The crowd gasped. Her hand barely caught a lower rung. Her shoulder twisted painfully, but she didn't fall. She looked down and saw the nobles. Laughing again. Then she looked at Cole. Still standing. Still watching. Still believing. With a grunt, she pulled higher. The last few feet felt like forever. Her fingers were raw. Her arms shook. Her eyes watered. But she reached the top and rang the bell. The hall went silent. The girl who was too weak, too small, too soft, had passed. Afterward, in the healer's room, her hands were covered in cooling gel. She winced with each touch. Cole stood nearby. "You didn't quit," he said softly. "I wanted to," she admitted. "I almost did." "But you didn't," he replied. She looked at him. You kept your hand raised." Even when they all laughed, he nodded. "Why?" Cole paused, then said, "Because sometimes one hand is all someone needs to believe they matter." The sun rose red over the palace towers, casting sharp shadows through the trial grounds. Today was the second test. Nali's small frame stood at the edge of the trial arena, her hands still bandaged from the wall of fire. Her skin ached. Her legs wobbled. But her eyes were steady. She had survived the first trial. The nobles didn't laugh this time. Not out loud, but their faces still said everything. "She got lucky," one muttered. "She won't survive this next one," another hissed. "Let the human watch her fail." High above, the council announced, "Trial 2, the Bridge of Flame and Bone." The ground opened. A deep canyon revealed itself, filled with hot steam and orange lava bubbling below. Across it stretched a narrow bridge, made of brittle bones and ancient metal rods. The bones creaked just from the wind. Flames shot up from hidden gaps. One wrong step could break the entire structure. There were no ropes, no rails, just death waiting below. The trial keeper explained the rules. You must cross the bridge within 5 minutes. No running, no floating tech, only your balance and your courage. Nali's heart pounded. Even seasoned warriors had refused this trial in the past. Some who tried had never returned. She turned to look back. Cole stood behind the safety line again. Still calm, still quiet, his hand resting on his chest. She nodded once and stepped forward. The first step made the bones groan. The bridge shook. The flames hissed around her like angry snakes. Below, the lava boiled. One drop would burn her whole body in seconds. Nali gritted her teeth. Step by step, she moved forward. Each bone beneath her foot wobbled as if deciding whether to hold or snap. She remembered something Cole had said last night. Sometimes being small is your strength. Light feet don't break heavy things. She held that thought like a shield. Behind her, a group of nobles watched through binocular lenses. She's shaking, one noted. She won't make it halfway. Let her fall. No one will remember her name. Halfway across, a sharp flame burst upward from the bridge crack. It caught her cape on fire. She panicked. Her hands slapped at the flames. The cloth burned fast. Suddenly she remembered, don't freeze. Keep moving. She ripped the cape off and let it fall into the lava. Her eyes stung. Smoke burned her throat. But she kept walking, and then, crack. A bone snapped under her right foot. She slipped, her arms flailed. One leg hung in the air. She screamed. But just in time, she dropped low and hugged the bridge with her small body, clinging tight to the bones like a lizard on a wall. The crowd gasped. Cole stepped closer to the edge, whispering under his breath, "You're okay. You're okay." Nali didn't cry. She didn't freeze. She slowly crawled back up hand by hand, shaking like a leaf. But still alive. And then, step by careful step, she kept going. At the very end, the bridge twisted suddenly. The bones curved like a snake's spine, making the last steps dizzying. The crowd leaned forward. One noble whispered, "Fall. Fall. Fall." But she didn't. With one final breath, Nali took the last step. She landed on the platform and collapsed. The bell rang again. The canyon closed. Silence. The Emperor stood from his throne for the first time during the trials. His face unreadable. He looked at Cole. "You believed she could cross?" Cole nodded. "I believed she'd try until her last breath." The Emperor stared at the human. "You risked your honor on a child," Cole replied. "Honor isn't earned by standing with the strong. It's earned by standing with the one who has no one." The nobles didn't speak this time. No one dared to. In the medic room, Nali lay on the healing bed. Cold pads covered her knees. Her fingers were red and sore, but she was awake. And she was smiling. Cole sat beside her, arms crossed, face proud. "You were brave," he said. "I was terrified," she whispered. "And still you crossed," he said. "That's what makes it real bravery." She blinked slowly. "They still hate me." "Let them," Cole replied. "Because soon, they won't matter." She turned her head. "You really think I can win this?" He nodded. "You've already done what they said was impossible. You didn't just survive the bridge. You made history," Nali whispered. "I think I want to make more." And in that moment, the tiny alien girl, once a royal, Joke began to believe she could become something greater. Not because of bloodline, not because of power, but because someone saw her as more. Night had fallen on the palace of the Zalari Empire. The stars above shimmered, like a field of glowing crystals, but inside the royal walls, shadows moved with purpose. Prince Nali lay in her chamber, too tired to sleep. Her body still ached from the trials. Her hands were bandaged, her arms sore. But it wasn't pain that kept her awake, it was fear. She had passed 2 deadly trials. Now the real danger began. Across the palace, deep in a silent corridor, a figure in black slipped through the halls. No footsteps, no breath, just movement like smoke. The figure held a blade made of cold light, deadly and silent, able to cut through bone like paper. This wasn't part of the trials. This was something else. A noble had paid for silence, One clean kill. Make it look like she gave up and disappeared. No body would be left to question. Cole Davis couldn't sleep either. The human walked slowly through the outer garden, feeling something strange in the air. He had spent enough years in war zones to know when danger was close. He looked up toward Nolly's tower, and his stomach turned. All lights off, no guards nearby, too quiet. Inside the chamber, Nolly sat up. The room was cold. Her breath came out in little clouds. Something was wrong. She heard a soft click. The door didn't creak. It whispered open like it was made for ghosts, and then he appeared. A tall shadow with glowing red eyes. His face hidden. Blade in hand, he moved toward her bed. Nolly froze. Her heart slammed against her chest. She whispered no. The figure raised the blade. Crash! The door exploded open behind the assassin. Cole Davis tackled the figure with all his weight, knocking the blade aside. The cold light weapon cut across the wall, slicing a deep glowing line into the crystal. Nolly screamed. The assassin twisted like a snake and kicked Cole across the room. But Cole was fast. Human fast. He grabbed the nearest object, a glowing vase, and smashed it across the attacker's head. Sparks flew. The assassin stumbled, then turned and ran out the window, melting through the glass like it wasn't there. Gone. Vanished. Silence filled the room. Only Nolly's fast breathing could be heard. Cole limped over and knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, trembling. Why are they trying to kill me?" He looked at the slice in the wall. "Because you're winning." She hugged her knees. "I didn't ask to be royal." Cole sat beside her on the floor. Sometimes being royal just means being the one who refuses to give up. She didn't answer, just stared at the glowing scar in the wall. Minutes later, guards arrived, too late. The Emperor himself came behind them, robe flowing, eyes filled with rage. "Who did this?" he demanded. Cole stood. An assassin. Tall, trained, professional. Someone wanted her gone without using the trials. The Emperor looked furious, but not surprised. "I'll double her guards," he said. "No," Cole replied. "Double her doors and they'll just send someone stronger." "You want her alive? Let me protect her." The Emperor studied the human for a long time. "You are not her blood." "I am her shield," Cole said simply. That was enough. Later, as Nolly lay back down, Cole sat in a chair by the window, eyes watching the shadows. "Will you fall asleep?" she asked. "No," he replied. "You don't even know me," she said. "I know enough," he said, glancing at her. "You're small. You're scared. But you keep going anyway." Nolly was quiet for a while. Then she whispered, "I don't want to be alone anymore." Cole leaned back in the chair. "Then don't be. I'll stay." That night, something changed. The girl who had walked into the palace as a joke had now survived both trials. And an assassin. Whispers spread across the empire. She lived? She fought off a killer. No, a human did. But she's still alive. And somewhere in the shadows of the palace, the noble who had paid for her death broke a glass in anger. She was supposed to be gone, he growled. Another noble leaned in. "Then you should have killed the human first." But it was too late now. The story had already begun. A girl no one believed in, and a human who never lowered his hand. The third and final trial was announced at dawn. This time there would be no fire, no bones, no bridges. This time, it was a duel. The kind of duel meant to crush a spirit, not just a body. The nobles gathered in the grand dueling ring, an arena of smooth obsidian surrounded by tall black stone pillars. Floating lights hovered in the air, casting long shadows across the ground. Above them, the twin moons glowed pale and sharp. The audience was twice the size of before. They were not here to see Nolly succeed. They had come to watch her fall. Prince Nolly stepped onto the battlefield, dressed in simple armor, too big for her again. Her wrists looked thin under the gauntlets. Her feet made small echoes on the stone. She looked like a child playing at war, but she did not tremble, not today. Across from her stood her opponent, Lord Trask, a royal cousin. He was twice her size, wearing gold-plated armor, holding a long shock blade. His muscles rippled. His teeth were sharp and bare, a perfect warrior. He bowed mockingly. "Forgive me, little prince," he said with a smirk. "I promised to leave something. For the healers." The crowd laughed, but Nally didn't respond. She only looked toward the edge of the ring where Cole Davis stood, behind the safety shield. He gave her one slow nod and mouthed just one word. "Breathe." The bell rang. The duel began. Trask came fast, too fast. He swung the shock blade with full strength, aiming to end it in one blow, but Nally ducked low, and the blade sliced empty air. The crowd gasped. She rolled sideways and scrambled back to her feet. Trask turned, snarling. "Lucky!" He spat. He rushed again. Nally jumped, slid under his legs, and swung her small practice blade at his ankle. It struck metal, but left a dent. She was fast. So fast. Faster than he expected. Cole had trained her in the quiet hours between trials. He didn't teach her brute strength. He taught her how to survive. "Don't meet strength with strength," he had said. "Let them waste energy. You use speed, use mind." Now it was working. Trask charged again, slower this time, calculating. Nally dodged, then faked left, struck right. Her blade cut across his side. A shallow wound, but blood sprayed. The arena fell silent. She had landed a hit. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. Even the most bitter nobles stared, shocked. But Trask was angry now. And angry warriors are dangerous. He stopped playing. He swung with fury, blade after blade, sparks flying, shouting curses. Nally's leg was grazed. Her shoulder slammed into a pillar. Her breath came ragged, and then his blade caught her sword. Crack, her blade shattered. She stumbled backward. Unarmed, the crowd roared, "It's over! She's finished!" She had no chance anyway. Trask raised his blade high. "You should have stayed a joke," he roared. Nally looked up, bleeding, gasping. She saw the blade about to fall, and then she remembered something else Cole had said. "When you can't win, confuse them." She reached down, grabbed a handful of arena dust, and threw it into his face. Trask screamed. Blinded, she ran forward and tackled him in the stomach. They both fell. His blade clattered to the floor. Nally rolled and grabbed it. The crowd froze. She stood over him now, his own weapon in her hands. Her arms shook. She could end it. One strike. One. Scream victory, but she didn't move. She looked at the Emperor, then at Cole, then down at Trask, who blinked. Stunned and silent, Nally dropped the blade, turned, and walked away. The silence in the arena was deeper than death. She had won, not just the duel, but herself. The trial bell rang again. 3 times victory. Later that night in the throne hall, the Emperor stood before the crowd. He placed the silver crown on Nally's head. "The trials are complete," he said, "and the heir is chosen." The nobles didn't laugh, they bowed. Even Trask. Nally turned to Cole. "Still wearing her bruises like medals," she whispered. "I didn't win because I was strong," Cole smiled. "You won because you didn't become like them." And in the history books of the Zalari Empire, that day would be remembered forever. The day the joke became the future, and the day one human refused to put his hand down. The palace halls were quiet after the duel, but the echoes of that final clash still lingered in every corner. The nobles, once loud and mocking, whispered behind their masks. The story of the small alien girl who defeated a grown heir spread faster than fire through dry grass. Prince Nally walked through the halls, her steps steady but careful. Her small frame had been tested, her strength measured, and her courage proven. Yet she was not smiling. She had won the duel, yes, but the whispers of those who doubted her still followed her like shadows. Cole Davis walked beside her, silent as always. His hand remained raised, not in victory, not in challenge, but in unwavering support. The gesture was simple, yet it radiated power. To the nobles it was almost insulting. To Nally it was everything. "Why are you still holding it?" she asked quietly. Cole glanced at her, his eyes calm. "Because I promised, and I don't break promises." She tilted her head, trying to understand. "Even when everyone else hates it?" "Especially then," he said. "The louder they shout, the more they need someone steady." For the first time, Nally realized what he had truly given her. Not protection, not tricks, not plans, but belief. Something no trial, no duel, and no blade could teach. That evening, the Emperor summoned the council. Nally and Cole entered the chamber together. Gasps spread when they saw the human standing beside the new heir. It was unprecedented. The Emperor's voice was steady. "This human has stood by the rightful heir. His hand has never dropped. This is law. He is now recognized as her protector. His support is binding." The council members shifted uneasily. Some nodded reluctantly, others scowled. They had expected the human to step back at some point, to falter or fear the Empire's wrath. But he had not. Nally felt her chest tighten. She had thought victory was crossing the trials, surviving the duel, defeating her enemies. But the real power was here, someone who refused to abandon her. One noble spoke, voice low and sharp. "This is not tradition. A human cannot hold power in our empire. He is an outsider." Cole turned slightly, calm but firm. "I am not here for power. I am here to keep the small girl alive long enough to rule wisely. That is all." Another noble muttered. "Then you risk everything. One mistake and it will be your life." Cole did not flinch. Better to risk life for justice than live in cowardice for comfort. Outside the chamber, Nally took a moment to breathe. She touched the hilt of her sword lightly, feeling the weight differently now. She had faced fire, bone, and steel. She had survived. And yet the real lesson had nothing to do with trials or weapons. Cole leaned closer. "They will test you in other ways. Not with blades, but with words, law, and fear. But you won't face it alone." Her eyes softened. "All this time, I thought being small meant I was weak." Cole smiled faintly. "Sometimes being small is your greatest advantage. People underestimate you. You move faster, think faster, and survive longer." She laughed quietly, almost in disbelief. "And you never dropped your hand. Even when everyone else laughed. Why? Because someone had to believe before you could believe yourself," he said. "You passed the trials. Now I pass mine." The next morning, the palace buzzed with whispers and speculation. Every noble, soldier, and servant had heard of the final duel and the unwavering human hand. Some tried to plot, thinking the human would falter, thinking the girl would fail in politics, thinking fear would break them both. But nothing broke them. Nally walked into the council room, head held high. Her voice rang clear. "I will lead this empire. I will protect every colony, every citizen, every weak and small soul. And I will do it with truth, courage, and the hand of my ally beside me." The nobles looked at each other. No one moved immediately to oppose her. The hand beside her, still raised, was a symbol they could not deny. It was not human arrogance. It was loyalty. It was strength. It was proof. Even Trask, the warrior who had fought her, lowered his eyes. Respect had grown where ridicule once stood. In the days that followed, Nally began issuing reforms quietly, consulting with Cole on strategy and law. He guided her with wisdom, not command. Slowly, small victories accumulated. A colony was saved from famine. A disputed territory was peacefully resolved. A traitorous lord was persuaded to switch allegiance not by threat, but by Nally's courage and Cole's steadfast support. The empire began to shift. And everywhere one symbol remained, Cole's hand never lowered, never shaken, never dropped. Nally looked at it often. It reminded her of her journey, the laughter, the trials, the duel, the night of the assassin. But most of all, it reminded her that no matter how small she seemed, someone believed she could rise, and with that belief, she knew she could conquer not just the trials, but the hearts and minds of her people. As night fell once again over the palace, Nally stood on the balcony, looking out at the glowing cities. Cole stood behind her, his hand still gently raised, not as a gesture of pride, but as a silent promise. The stars above shimmered. The empire waited, and the hand never dropped. For the first time, Nally understood fully. Victory was not just survival. Victory was the courage to keep moving forward, with someone believing in you when no one else would. And in that moment, the small alien girl, once laughed at, was no longer a joke. She was the future. Months had passed since Prince Nally's final duel. The palace, once full of whispers and sneers, now echoed with quiet respect. The empire was changing, not because of fear, but because of courage. And at the center of it all stood the smallest figure anyone had ever expected to lead. Nally had grown, not in size, but in confidence. Her small frame carried the weight of the empire with grace. Every step she took was careful, deliberate, yet strong. Citizens who once laughed now bowed respectfully. Soldiers who once mocked now followed her orders without question. And yet, her eyes always found Cole Davis. He had not lowered his hand once since the day he raised it in the Grand Hall. He had become more than her protector. He was her guide, her anchor, and in many ways, her mirror. In him she saw calm strength, unwavering loyalty, and a courage that never wavered. The first challenge of her reign came quickly. Several distant colonies had rebelled, believing a small child could never truly rule. The messages arrived at the palace like fire-stamped letters, threats, demands, and doubts. Nali read them aloud in the council chamber. The nobles around her expected her to hesitate, to look frightened. But she only smiled faintly. "We will go," she said simply. Cole raised an eyebrow. "You mean you will go yourself?" "Yes," she replied. "They will see that I am not a joke, that I lead, not with fear but with vision." The journey to the colonies was long, across planets and moons, through asteroid storms and solar winds. Nali rode beside Cole in the transport ship, her hands gripping the controls lightly. She studied maps, learned each territory's needs, and planned her speeches carefully. The rebels, expecting an inexperienced leader, were stunned when the small figure landed on their main plaza. Her voice, though not loud, carried authority. "I am Nali," she declared, "your princess, your ruler, and I am here to listen, not to fight. But I will not allow the empire to fracture." There was silence, no laughter, only fear mixed with curiosity. Then Cole stepped forward. His hand was still raised, a silent signal of support. To the rebels it was as shocking as the princess herself. "You see," Cole said quietly, "she has the courage to face you, and I have the courage to stand with her. This empire is not ruled by size or age or power alone. It is ruled by integrity and by those who do what is right." The words hung in the air. Slowly one rebel leader stepped forward, then another, and another. Within hours the rebellion dissolved, not because of threat but because they had seen something stronger than fear, unwavering belief. Back at the palace, Nali's reforms continued. Education programs were launched across colonies, new trade agreements secured, and the military reorganized to protect the weak rather than to oppress. Every policy she made reflected the lessons of the trials: strategy over strength, courage over fear, and belief over ridicule. Cole watched silently, always beside her, hand never lowered. He had become a symbol not just of support, but of the new era Nali was building. The empire would not forget the human who had stood when all others mocked. Months turned into years. Stories spread of the tiny alien prince who had survived impossible trials, defeated a full-grown heir, and refused to strike down her enemy unnecessarily. And of the human whose hand never dropped, who had believed in her when no one else would. Even former bullies came forward, humbled. Trask, once her greatest challenger, approached her one day in the training yard. "You've done what none of us believed possible," he said quietly. "I was wrong. You are not small. You are not weak. You are extraordinary." Nali smiled faintly. "Thank you. But remember, it was never about size. It was about belief. And about having someone who never lets you fall." Trask nodded, bowing deeply. The empire prospered under Nali's reign. Trade flourished, colonies united, and peace grew where tension once ruled. Citizens told tales of the small girl prince who dared to face impossible trials, and a human who refused to lower his hand. In her chambers, Nali often looked at the horizon of her planet. Cole stood quietly behind her as he always did. "You never put it down," she said softly. "I never promised I would," he replied. Nali chuckled. "I've learned something. Victory isn't about strength. It's about standing when everyone else sits down. It's about moving forward when everyone else doubts, and it's about having someone who believes in you." Cole smiled faintly, eyes watching the stars. "And you've done all of that?" "With your courage and with mine beside you." Years later, when children asked the story of Nali's rise, it was told simply, "There was a small alien girl. Everyone laughed at her. Everyone doubted her. But one human raised his hand and never put it down, and together they changed the empire forever." And the legend of the tiny prince and the unwavering human spread across the stars. Because sometimes, it wasn't the biggest, strongest, or oldest who led. It was the one who refused to give up, and the one who refused to let them fall.